But I'm really delighted to be joined by Just Stop Oil spokesman Phoebe Plummer. Thank you for coming in, because I know you don't agree with me. How do you square the circle that people want to be more prosperous, they want to lead comfortable lives, but you're saying it's absolutely urgent we stop emissions now? How do you make the two work?
Hi, Jacob. Thank you so much for having me on. As you say, I'm Phoebe. I'm 21 and I'm a student from London and a supporter of Just Stop Oil. And I wonder why you think it's incompatible to help people with the cost of living crisis and to switch to renewables, which are 9 times cheaper than fossil fuels. Can you name me one of your viewers who is suffering the consequences of the cost of living crisis, who doesn't want their energy bills to be 9 times cheaper right now?
Well, unfortunately, that's not what's happening, because the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow, and you need to have fossil fuel backup to make up the gap. About half our energy every day is still coming from natural gas. Where's that going to come from?
Well, why aren't we implementing renewable technology? The largest solar farm in the UK was built in 6 weeks.
But it's not
it takes up to 28 years for any oil to come out of the ground in the North Sea.
But it's not going to produce any energy at night. That's the problem with renewables, is that they don't provide the base load that you need.
We already have the capacity to provide so much of our energy from renewables without any tech.
This girl, okay, is now part of my Hall of Shame, which is part of SIMR, the acronym that I coined, SIMR. Stupid, idiotic, moronic, retarded. Sometimes we have to use these, it's hyperbole, because there's nothing else that can actually show and to demonstrate where these people are. I mean, first of all, socialist justice warrior written all over, virtue signaling all over the place, woke completely. As she is 21 years old, she's a spokesperson, a spokeswoman, I'm going to say. She's a woman and she's speaking, so she's a spokeswoman for the domestic terrorist organization I consider Just Stop Oils. And she's basically saying, use technology, you know? We already can do it. We can lower the gas. We can lower the energy prices 9 times lower just by using wind and solar. Folks, it isn't cheap enough yet. And that's exactly what Jacob is basically trying to get across to this idiot. And I just want to know, all these clothes that she's wearing. I wonder how much, the dye that's in her hair, right? Where do you think that's coming from? Oil byproducts. I mean, you know, be the first to speak, you hypocrite.
Technology needed for storage solutions.
But where is this coming from? Because when the wind doesn't blow, when we had really cold days, we were reliant on importing from the EU, on coal and on gas. How are we going to replace that in the short term?
Quite frankly, I'm not a scientist. What I am doing is listening.
That's right. You're not a scientist, and you're listening to other idiot scientists who really aren't scientists. They're just idiots.
Listening to what all the experts are saying. We're living in this insane world where the experts aren't being listened to. The United Nations has called for no more oil and gas. The International Energy Agency has said we can have no new oil and gas. The IPCC report, the largest global report on the climate crisis, have all said we can have no new oil and gas. How many more experts need to say it?
Because we can't do it tomorrow. What are we going to do in terms of transport? That we still need petrol for cars and we need diesel for lorries. How are we going to get goods into supermarkets without this?
Quite frankly, I'm not a scientist. What I'm doing is I'm looking at the world and we're living the effects of the climate crisis.
What you're actually doing is, okay, you're just a young, stupid, millennial, Gen X or whatever you want to call it, and virtue signaling. You have absolutely no freaking idea. After you leave this studio, what are you going to do? You're going to get back right away. You're going to get on your energy-driven phone. You're going to get into a cab or a taxi or your car. You're going to go to your home or your apartment. You're going to turn on the lights. You're going to turn on the electricity. You're going to turn on the heat. You're going to turn on the air conditioning, whatever you need. You're going to open up your refrigerator. You're going to take out some ice cubes. You're going to take out some Coca-Cola or soda or whatever, which is in a plastic bottle, byproduct, okay, of oil. And you're going to use all sorts of things that some of their baseline products if you go back to the derivatives, are coming from fossil fuels. That's what you're going to do. But you're going to come on a show like this and you're going to virtue signal all day freaking long.
Today, right now, people are dying. Children are starving. Families are fleeing their homes.
But energy...
And it's preventable. We have the solutions.
Cheap energy is one of the things that has hugely extended life expectancy by the ability to control temperatures, whether this is by air conditioning or by heating, the ability to store food more effectively, the ability to transport food, and indeed use fertilizers to grow more food, has all been essential in increasing life expectancy. Taking all that away would be disastrous for life expectancy.
Do you know what's essential in keeping our food supply? Tackling the climate crisis. This year we lost a third of our wheat crops, half of our potato crops, and it's only going to get worse. We're heading to a future where people are going to be fighting over the last loaves of bread at Lidl.
But the only way we get our wheat crop is by putting the fertilizers on that come from fossil fuels. How are we going to replace that? That the productivity of organic farming is so much lower than of modern farming methods. We cannot feed the world on organic farming, and you must know that.
How do you expect to feed the world when our crops are destroyed by droughts, floods, wildfires, storms?
You've always had weather events that have affected crops, but that actually using fossil fuels for fertilizers and moving on to genetic modification of crops has enormously increased the yield. That since Malthus rate, we've increased agricultural productivity by about 2% per annum. And this is what is allowing people to get extended life expectancy because they've got more certainty of food. And this all depends on cheap energy, which has come from fossil fuels.
Jacob, you have 6 children. Do you not care about their future? Do you not care about them being able to feed themselves? Because right now, under this government's policies, your 6 children are heading towards a future that is filled with life-threatening extreme weather events, crop failures, famine, war.
For 21 years old, to be in this kind of fear, to be talking with this kind of stupidity, with this kind of virtue signaling, with this kind of wokeness, saying, oh, Jacob, you got 6 children. Don't you care about your kids? They're not going to be able to eat. You're going to starve them. They're going to be just like those kids in Africa that don't have any food. What are you going to do, Jacob? Your kids are going to perish. Jacob, please don't let your kids perish. Don't do that. Give them the chance to have food. Get rid of all the energy, get rid of all the oil, get rid of all the fertilizer. Then your kids will survive and have a better future.
Suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
I think you've taken the evidence for an evolving climate and then applied it in an extraordinarily extreme way and are forgetting about the enormous advantages.
I can't believe you're talking to me about an evolving climate.
Well, the climate is...
People are dying.
But this is a statement...
Do you know how many people are suffering around the world?
What evidence is there that this is because we're using fossil fuels, that the climate evolves, but more people die each year from cold than from heat, as you know?
Have you read the IPCC report? What do you mean? What science?
Well, but in terms, you're making extreme claims, but you're suggesting by not using fossil fuels, we would not produce the food we need to feed the world population.
I'm suggesting that if we keep on heading down this genocidal path of mass destruction, then no, there...
This genocidal path of mass destruction. This genocidal path of mass destruction.
Won't be any foods in the supermarket. Then we will see vast swathes of the world uninhabitable. We will see mass displacement of people.
But if you took out fossil fuels tomorrow, you would simply not have the productivity of agriculture you need to feed 8 or 9 billion people. And that would be tomorrow. I'm not saying you shouldn't reduce emissions, not arguing that. I'm simply saying you must do it when you have the technology to replace the energy that you're using. Because otherwise, all the consequences you're arguing for will happen immediately. We will simply not have the food we need to feed the population of the world.
Jacob, you know we're not asking for the taps to be turned off tomorrow. All of you know that. We're asking for an end to all new fossil fuel licenses, in line with what climate scientists around the world are saying.
But if you turn it off for new licenses now, you're requiring a change that is going to happen before we have the technology in place to substitute for it. So you may be delaying it by a few years, but this has to be a rational process to do it once you've got the technology sorted out, and we haven't got the technology yet.
So I understand you're an economics man, Yes. So
Well, I'm interested in economics.
yeah, so I've done some maths for you. I hope you don't mind. I looked up your net worth online. It's quite easy to find.
It's not actually true. It's easy to find, but it's
in
not
the
actually
hundreds
true.
of millions.
But that's not.
It costs around £20,000 to insulate a British home. So that's 8,000 British homes for your 150 net million, which is what it says online.
Which is untrue. But
do you really think that you're worth more than 8,000 cold, freezing families?
Have you seen the studies on insulation? That insulation.
Do you care about the people living in fuel poverty?
Very much so. When I was Secretary of State for Energy, I was responsible for developing the plan that has brought energy prices down for families. That was policy that I was intimately involved in designing. So of course I care about that.
So you do understand.
Wow, did he just give her a couple of slap-olas across the cheek-olas, right? He just put her in her place. He just mansplained to this child, basically. She's 21, folks. We have to give some break to these children, these 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old petulant millennials, these woke virtue signaling climate activists, these zealots. And she just basically said, oh, your net worth, Jacob, is like $150 million. I did the math for you. I did the math. You're economics, man. I can do some economics. I hope you understand my numbers. And Jacob's going, you can find it, but that doesn't mean that it's true. Do you know that your net worth could make 8,000 homes? We could insulate them. Do you feel that you're worth more than 8,000 British homes? This is the virtue signaling that is coming out of verbal diarrhea, which emanates from these children, folks, from these children. You know, they say the human brain is not developed really until 26 or 27. This is proof positive that is true. In her case, it'll never be fully developed. They're gone, folks. They are completely gone. They have been taken in by the cult of climatology.
The report that you're asking me about says that the cost of insulating British homes is so expensive because of the government's failure to insulate British homes.
But what happens 3 years after people have insulated their homes? They use the same amount of energy as they did before. There's been a study on this, which I'm sure you've seen reports on. In the first year, they save money. In the second year, they save a small amount of money. In the third year, they have actually made themselves warmer because the economics of it is they have a certain amount they can spend on energy.
What happens when the government fails to insulate British homes? 7.5 million British people live in fuel poverty. Parents are starving themselves so that they can feed their children, and people are freezing to death in their homes because they are forced to choose between heating and eating. People are dying. Are you hearing me?
Because it's simply not true. The government introduced a cap on energy prices and support for families who couldn't afford energy prices. That those were brought in last year, and they are very significant
supports to ensure. What do you mean it's not true? Have you spoken to an ordinary person who is suffering the cost of living crisis right now?
I don't believe there's any such thing as ordinary people. I believe everybody is in their individual way quite remarkable. I think ordinary people is the most condescending way of referring to our fellow British citizens.
Well,
oh, nice. He just gave her a couple more slap-olas on her fat cheek-olas.
I don't. What, you want to get some?
Ordinary people. I don't use the word ordinary people because I think everybody's extraordinary. They are great people, and I think it's just foolish.
Oh, okay.
And it's very terrible of you to use the term ordinary people to describe British citizens. How dare you?
Right.
Hey, Jacob, baby. Sir, baby.
Oh, okay.
Love it, sir. I love it.
Okay.
She knows she's just been smack-olaed a couple of times.
Of course you don't relate to the ordinary people. You're a millionaire.
The figures, my personal circumstances, are nothing to do with whether we impoverish people by making energy prices higher. And you want to make them higher, and I don't. But what I'd say to you finally is, why don't you stand for election? Why do you think it is right to throw soup over a picture rather than standing election and seeing if you can get people to vote for your view of the world?
You're an educated man, Jacob. You know that this is how successful movements of social change happen. They must cause disruption. And Antonio Gutierrez, he's the Secretary General of the United Nations. He has said that we are on a highway to climate hell. He has said that licensing new fossil fuels is economic and moral madness. The Secretary General of the United Nations is calling for an end.
These kids are globalists. Who gives a crap Who gives a freaking crap whether or not the United Nations wants something, or the IPCC, or any other government bureaucratic institution? We don't want those morons, those idiots, those retards, those stupid institutions. We don't want them dictating freaking policy to us, because every time they do, it causes unbelievable and in many cases irreparable harm to the human beings that they have feelings that they think that they possibly might work, and it never ever freaking does. But yet these millennials, these young petulant children, fall for the trap because their minds aren't developed, and you can fill them with all kinds of stupidity and mush between these ears.
To all new fossil fuels. What makes you think that
don't-
I have time to get into power and make these changes?
So you want to be a dictator? You don't want voters to decide?
That's
you want to tell
absolutely not
them.
what I said, and you know
Why don't
that.
you stand for election? Put yourself forward and see if people want your way.
Because
or they
we
want
don't
my
have
way.
time. Because
So
if I want to have a future, if I want to have
you
a
have to
future
tell-
where I can feed myself, where I can love my family,
We're not going to
where
feed
I
them.
have-
We're not going to feed them without fossil fuels, which are the essential fertilizers.
We
Thank
need
you
to
for
make
coming
the
on.
change now.
Unbelievable. This girl here is just absolutely. Yeah, I thought Greta Thunberg, she's part of my Hall of Shame. She's part of Simmer, stupid, idiotic, moronic, retarded. I have a feeling, okay, that Phoebe, the idiot plumber, I think somebody ought to be checking her pipes, man, because there's some leaks going on in her pipes, boy. Let me tell you, there's a major leakage going on here. It was just unbelievable. I mean, these kids, they just take this stuff in and as this freaking gospel. And it is, folks, it is a religion. It is an eschatology that is going on here. There's this sin of using fossil fuels, the sin of using coal, the sin of using natural gas, the sin of using anything that they don't deem, that's coming from solar or wind. And then to redeem yourself, you have to basically, get carbon credits. You've got to kneel before, the cross of energy, independence. I mean, it's just, they take this stuff and they just completely, emit it. I mean, the verbal diarrhea that comes from these kids and these leaders is absolutely unbelievable. It is stunning. It is, I think it's horrific. I think it is scary to know that this could be the future of some leaders in some leadership roles that would be, leftist, socialist, Marxist. I mean, this is very scary stuff. And you're going to have other kids and other children that are going to listen to the garbage and the stupidity and the idiocy, the asininity, the moronicity, the retardedness of these kids spewing this verbal diarrhea that has absolutely zero fact base whatsoever, nothing at all. Unbelievable. Anyways, folks, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your host. My name is Dr. Nasir. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel, hit that notification bell, like, share, and follow us. Let us know what you think. My final thought is, when you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. We'll see you again next time, folks. Take care and stay safe.